Sarah, she had a heart for children in need, but she never thought that she had the ability to make a difference. She had an idea to start a tutoring program at her church, missed it, thinking that someone else would be better at doing this than I would. Years later, another church launched a similar program, and she saw how much that it changed people's lives. She realized that she had buried her idea out of fear. She finally started her own program, and within a year, struggling kids in her community were excelling in school. What has God entrusted to you? My dad used to say, and I'm sure you guys have heard this or you guys have said this, use what the good Lord gave you. Unfortunately, when my dad would say it to me, he was talking about my brains and not necessarily my gifts and talents. Sarah was just like the servant in the parable of the hidden talents. We'll be looking at the account found in Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 to 30. The parable teaches us about stewardship, about responsibility, about faithfulness, and the kingdom of God. Jesus tells this parable because the people thought the kingdom of God would appear immediately, but he knew better. He teaches them that his kingdom will be coming at a later time, but in the meantime, his followers, us, we are responsible to use what he has given to us to build the kingdom. The parable challenges us to consider, are we faithfully using what God has given us? The first part of the scripture we see, Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 and 15, the master entrusts his resources to his people. Starting in verse 14, again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The master, representing God, gives different amounts of talents and abilities to different people. First one received 5, second received 2, another one 1. You see, he gave his talents to the servants. They were never theirs. He gave his talents to his servants so they could do what they needed to do to advance his kingdom. C.S. Lewis once said, every faculty you have, your power of thinking or of moving your limbs from moment to moment, is given to you by God. If you devote every moment of your whole life exclusively to his service, you could not give him anything that was not, in a sense, his own already. Everything we have, everything we are, our entire being belongs to God. He has given us this talent. Some of us have some malfunctions. Some of us are blind in one eye. Some of us have brain damage. Some of us aren't always this good looking. Never. He has given us everything. He has blessed us beyond what we could imagine. See, God gives us different abilities, resources, time, influence, and opportunities. But every single person is entrusted with something. He gives them to us using his wisdom and fairness. Now, through God's wisdom, he has known not to give me talents of baking because my sugar would be higher than what it is. I would be larger than what I am. I would eat everything that I bake. That's not one of my talents. Now, I can read the back of a box, and I can make something from the back like what's Heinz, Duncan Hines. That's good. But, it's just not as good as what my mom used to make. My mom did everything from scratch, and it was phenomenal. And that's probably why I have diabetes today. But that's on the other point. That's not a talent that God has given me. Too many times we think in this parable that it's speaking of money, but it's whatever God gives us, whatever He has blessed us with. Sometimes we look at someone, maybe they're up singing, maybe they're giving a speech, maybe they're acting, and we go, man, I could never do that like that. And so I'm just not going to try. What we need to do is stop comparing ourselves and what we have to others. And we should focus only on using what God has given to us just for the purpose of advancing God's kingdom. Not everybody can sing like my favorite, Aretha Franklin. She's my favorite. And when I listen to her, all others to me just don't compare. Now imagine if someone like Whitney Houston, who is actually related to Aretha Franklin in some way. I don't know if it's her niece or godmother, whatever it was. But imagine if she was sitting there listening to Aretha going, I could never sing like that. So I'm not even going to try. Then we would have never heard or listened from Whitney Houston. One of my favorite actors is Sean Connery. I just think I think part of it's his voice. It just has to be, his voice. Even in the things that he does voiceovers, he was a dragon in one movie and just did just his voice was just, and I'm a James Bond fan. And so, when I look at him, and Sandra Bullock is my favorite actress, and imagine if the people that they mentored, Harrison Ford once said that when he was younger, he would look up to Sean Connery, and so it was a huge blessing when he was able to do Raiders of the Lost Ark, The Last Crusade, which wasn't, but the Last Crusade, with Sean Connery as his dad. Now imagine if Harrison Ford was like, man, he's just too good. There's no way that I can be as good of an actor as him. Imagine the career he would have lost out on. But he didn't. Whitney Houston didn't. When you look at others, they may have the same gift or talent as you. They may not be able to reach the same people as you can using that same gift or talent. That's why we have so many genres of music. For some, one of my favorite Christian groups is Audio Adrenaline. Most people in this room would not care for Audio Adrenaline. They're a little harder, a little faster, things like that. While some of you, the Gaither Vocal Band, and that's just not my style. And that. I blame my roommate in college because he would always listen to, the Southern Gospel quartets. We kind of threw each other off. He was like, hey, do you like gospel? Being from Detroit, I'm thinking gospel. I was like, yeah, I listen to it all the time. Then he put on Bill Gaither. And I was like, this isn't the Black Mississippi Choir that I was thinking was going to be singing for us. That's why we have different genres. The people that sing in the Black Mississippi Choir will not reach necessarily the people that Bill Gaither can, and vice versa. So don't compare your gift to another person's gift if it's the same gift. Because God will use that same gift to advance His kingdom in other people. There will always be someone more talented than you. It's not about what they have, but how you use yours. It's not about what they have, but how you use yours. When I was at Olivet, there was a football player. He was a senior, and I can't remember if I was a freshman or a sophomore. His name was Rainier. Played football. He was as physically strong as he could be without any enhancements. He was one person, I think the only one, or one of the few from Olivet, that were actually being scouted by NFL teams. There were 3 teams. I know one was Pittsburgh, and one was Dallas. I can't remember what the other one was. The guy was phenomenal. We could not understand why he was at Olivet Nazarene University playing football. He was so good. 2 or 3 games into his senior year, he got hit and just blew his knee out completely. needed surgery. His career was over. You would hear people around campus just how down they were and how bad they felt for Rainier and everything. And then second semester, he got up in chapel and he spoke. And he said that people at Olivet were having a harder time with his injury than he was. He said, I did not come to Olivet to play pro football. He said, I came to Olivet to get a business degree so he could go back into his community, which was a low-income community, and teach younger children and teenagers how they can be financially stable and pick themselves up and work. He said, the whole football thing was just a sidebar that God gave me. He said, but my real talent is this. And then he began to talk about what he wanted to do and what his plans were. And then we were just kind of left there scratching our heads going, whoops. We wanted more for him than what he wanted for him. He just wanted to be used of God. And he knew that he could be used of God back home in his community far better than he could as an NFL football player. Talents. God gives us even multiple talents. And he also takes some away. So the servant's response, verse 16, the man who had received 5 talents went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 more. So also the one with 2 talents gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. The first 2 servants invested and doubled what they received. They took what God had given them and used it. God increased the blessing over and over and their influence. The third servant hid his talent out of fear. Faithful servants take action, while unfaithful ones hold back. They hold back out of fear, out of laziness, or give excuses. Oh, I can't do that because ... Well, so-and-so is already doing something like this, so ... What if I fail? What if people laugh? I'm just tired today. I've been busy all my life doing stuff in the church. Now it's time for me to ... Are we using our God-given gifts to serve others and advance his kingdom? Or are we holding back, playing it safe out of fear? I want you to take a moment right now to think about the talent or talents that God has given you. You may have things that you do not even realize God has blessed you with. That is a talent that he's given you. Now remember, talent isn't just performing. It's whatever God has given to you. When we think of these, we think of people that sing, play, they teach, they preach, they can paint, they do woodworking. We think of even financially, but it is so much more. Remember what C.S. Lewis said, every faculty you have, your power of thinking or of moving your limbs from moment to moment, is given to you by God. If you devoted every moment of your whole life exclusively to his service, you could not give him anything that was not, in a sense, his own already. So think of what God has made you good at. Green thumb. Maybe you're a great organizer. Maybe you're good at decorating or hospitality. Maybe you can write. Maybe it's just that you have joy. What are your talents? The things that God has blessed you with. I guarantee you have at least one. What is it that you can do well, and it brings you joy? So after the servants respond, then the master comes in with his judgment. Verse 19, for a long time the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 talents brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 talents. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The man with 2 talents also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 talents. See, I have gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then the man who had received 1 talent came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown, and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid, and I went out and I hid your talent in the ground. See, here's what belongs to you. His master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed? Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have not will be taken from them. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. You see, upon the master's return, he holds the servants accountable. When Jesus returns, we will be held accountable. Sometimes we even feel that accountability today. I know in my life, when I know that I could do something and I was just like, I was lazy, I didn't volunteer, I felt this inside of me, God just kind of convicting me. Going, well, you know, that person could have used you at that moment. The faithful servants are rewarded. Well done, good and faithful servants. They are rewarded with greater responsibility. And a lot of us, that's one reason why we don't want to use our talent. We don't want to be used more. We don't want to have more pressure on us. We don't want to have more responsibility. But also notice what they received. They received joy in their master's presence. When we do not use the talents that God has given to us, joy is robbed out of our lives. Joy in the master's presence. You see, not only the servants were joyful, not only the servants gained, but the master was joyful as well. God values faithfulness over success. God's rewards aren't just for eternity. They begin when we're faithful serving Him now. God has even given us talents, abilities, and resources that we do not even know we have yet. But when we exercise the ones we currently have, He will reveal them to us. The unfaithful servant, though, he's rebuked for his laziness, and he loses what he had. If you notice what he did, he blamed the master instead of taking responsibility. The man who had received 1 talent, master, he said, I knew that you're a hard man, harvesting where you've not sown and gathering where you've not scattered seed. So I was afraid, and I went out and hid it in the ground. He said, I know you're a hard man. That was his excuse. If I would have lost it, who knows what you have done to me? So I just decided that I would just hold on to what it is and not share it, not try and let it bloom to myself. His fear led to inaction, which then leads to loss. Fear and complacency can rob us of opportunities to grow in Christ. Are you living in faith or fear? God calls us to step out and to use our gifts for His glory. When I was younger, when I was in junior high and high school, That's when I kind of realized that I could sing. And I sang a solo in front of the class, my school, and so then I was known throughout the school as the singer. When I was in high school, I had perfect pitch, which if you don't know what that means is like if Jeff says, sing a C sharp, I could sing a C sharp without a piano or anything. I could just boom and do it. As I got older in high school, I began to get an ego in high school. And it's kind of funny that today I couldn't hear the pitch or I couldn't sing or anything like that because it was a reminder to me when I was in high school and I got this ego because of the gift and the talent and I began to use it for me instead of for God, God took that away. I don't have perfect pitch today. And this morning I kind of chuckled because I couldn't even find the note when I was singing on the guitar. And I had the pitch there. So when God gives us these talents, he wants us to use them for his kingdom, for his glory. God expects us to be faithful stewards of what he's given to us. He rewards faithfulness, not success by the worldly standards, but faithfulness. R.C. Sproul once said, "We are called to be faithful, not successful. But faithfulness leads to fruitfulness in God's kingdom." What if we focus less on success and more on fruit? What if we began to think, if I used my talent, if I used the gifts that God has given me to advance his kingdom, that others might know Christ, instead of, if I use my gift or talent, I might fail. Because when we hear the word failure, we do not think of success. But when we hear fruitfulness, that brings success in God's kingdom. So what if we started focusing less on success and more on fruitfulness? If Jesus were to return today, would he find us using our talents for his glory? Advancing his kingdom? Jesus has gone to prepare a place for us, like John 14, 2-3 says. But we must be faithful here on earth while we wait for his return. We must be faithful in using our talents and sharing the gospel so others can come to Christ before it's too late. So we see this lesson, this parable that Jesus teaches us. So what do we do? What is our call to action? 1 Peter 4:10 says, "Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms." Have you ever thought about that last portion of that verse? As faithful stewards of what? God's grace in its various forms. It kind of reminds me of the body. There are some that are to be the hands, some that are going to be the foot, some's going to be the mouth, some's going to be the ears. And they're all one part. And all those parts grace in various forms. If you're a phenomenal baker, God has given you that talent to advance his kingdom by his grace in that form. If you're good at public speaking, God has given you that talent to use his grace in that form. Maybe you're great at sending encouragement notes. God has given you that talent so that his grace can be used in that form. Our talents, our gifts, our abilities are God's grace in various forms to reach others. So if we do not use the gifts and the talents and the abilities, the resources, our time, our influence, and our opportunities that God has given to us, we are robbing others of seeing God's grace at work, not only in our lives, but in the lives of others. If we do not use These talents, gifts, abilities, resources, time, influence, and opportunities that God has given to us, we are robbing others of seeing God's grace at work. Charles Spurgeon said, God gives us talents, not for our own selfish ends, but that we may use them to his glory and for the good of our fellow men. So I ask again, what talents has God entrusted to you? What do you have that you can use to advance God's kingdom? There was, at a church I was at, there were two mechanics in the church. And at least once, I want to say they did it twice a year, but at least once a year, on one day, they would open up the church, and whoever needed anything done in their car, or if they just wanted their car looked over, they could bring it to the church, and they would do it for free. All they had to do was buy the part. It was an amazing talent and gift. I am a total moron when it comes to automobiles. Not as bad as my brother Bob. My dad, back in the late 70s, we had the boats as cars. And my dad was huge on always making sure that we checked the oil. And my dad asked my brother Bob, he said, have you checked the oil lately? And my brother Bob said, no, I have not. He said, well, go check the oil, because it was this big boat of a car. You could run into the Empire State Building, and the Empire State Building would fall. The car would be fine. So my brother Bob went out, and I was sitting in the living room. I was around 10, probably 10 at the time. My brother was 16, 17, and it took him a long time to see what was going on with the car. And so my dad got up, and he went to the door, and he's looking out. All of a sudden, he opened up the door, and he just started yelling at my brother, "What are you doing, idiot?" My brother's like, "I'm looking to see if there's enough oil in it." And my dad shook his head, and by this time, I went to the door and walked out, and my brother was standing there with a dipstick in his hand looking down the hole to see how much oil was in the car. I'm not as bad as my brother Bob when it comes to cars. My dad told him, he said, the thing that you're holding in your hand tells you what it is. So he showed him how to use a dipstick and that. And it was like a quarter too low. And so my dad said, okay, go ahead and put the oil in the car. So, you had the cans, then you had the spout that you punched in the cans then. And my brother Bob, he just stood there and he looked. He said, how do I get it in? And my dad said, well, use a funnel. And my brother Bob took a funnel and he tried to put it over that little hole that the dipstick was there. True story. So then my dad showed him, no, this thing that says oil, you turn that in. And so he showed him how to do that. And I'm so glad that I was there to see that. So I knew how to put oil in the car so I wouldn't be called the moron or the dipstick. But cars are not my thing, and that. Some people it is. Mechanics it is. Mechanical things. That is a talent, a gift that God has given you to advance his kingdom. Are you actively using your time, talents, and resources for his kingdom? Do not let fear, doubt, or laziness keep you from using your gifts. John Wesley said, do all you can, by all means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can. Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can. One day, Jesus will return. Will he find us faithful? If you've been faithful, keep going. Be faithful. Take risk for his kingdom, and trust that God rewards those who serve him. If you've been fearful or hesitant, ask God for courage to serve, to use your gift, to use your talent. This week, I want to encourage you to identify one gift, one resource, or some opportunity that you have, and commit to using it more